Hey everybody, my name is David Rao and I'm the music teacher who blogs at makemomentsmatter.org. You can also find my ideas on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and a variety of other places if you search for my name, David Rao, or Make Moments Matter Music Education. This week I'm going to be sharing mostly about my 5th grade lessons. I'm going to be talking about Orff instrument procedure and some of the things that I use with 5th grade or have been using with 5th grade this week. But really there are some practices that I use for 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th. So if you're interested in more instrument procedure or some of the tricks and things that go into the logistics of that, you're going to want to stick around for that a little bit later. But I'm going to get to those 5th grade ideas and some Orff instrument things in just a little bit. Before I get to that, I just wanted to say if you have questions along the way, please ask questions. I'm going to try and answer them as best I can along the way. And if you don't get your questions answered, I always come back and try and answer those after the video is over. Or you can take the conversation to my Facebook group, which is Every Moment Matters Music Education Community. You can find that on Facebook when you search that in the search bar, or it's linked to my page on Facebook. Also, one more thing, if you're interested, if I mention something or you see something and you're like, where do I get that or where can I find that resource? On Instagram, if you go to my link in profile, you can click there and there's a button that says Musical Mondays Recap page, and that has all the links for you. And on Facebook, if you click the link at the bottom of this caption, you should be able to find all of those links and resources linked there. Okay, and one more thing. I had so much fun this last week in Virginia Beach, sharing with the Tidewater Area Orff chapter. It was such a blast to share and to see people in person. Thanks to everybody who came, some people from quite a distance, so it's really exciting. Thanks for everyone who came. The next thing I get to do, I'm very excited, on November 1st and 2nd, I'll be in Saskatchewan for the Saskatchewan Music Conference. So if you're in Saskatchewan, I hope that I'll see you there. It's going to be a really great time. Okay, so before I get to my 5th grade lessons, I'm just going to check and make sure I'm doing everything right on Facebook here. Okay, before I get to my 5th grade lessons, I'm going to... I do need to change one thing on Facebook here. I somehow was not able to see any of your questions last week, so we'll see if I'm able to do that this week. I don't know. I can't see them now, so maybe they'll show up. Who knows? So what I want to do before I get into my 5th grade ideas and lessons is I want to share just a little bit about some ideas from younger grades, just a couple little things. I've shared before about my yarn ball. I shared about this early on in the school year. And one of the things that I shared about was how I use it for a name game. And I want to share a couple more ideas about how you can use it in everyday, in your classroom, and some things you might use it for in older grades or something that might spark an idea for you. So the yarn ball it's pretty easy to make on your own, and I did a whole blog post about how you can make it, and that's linked on the links page. But the way that I use it initially every year is I use it for K1-2 for my name game, and so the little poem goes, rickety rackety rockety ree, will you say your name for me? And you could just go around the circle, and it's a super fun little game that you could do with kids. The way that I make it a little bit more interesting is I say, oh my gosh, I've got a magic yarn ball here, and the greatest thing about this yarn ball is that at the end of the poem it is going to make you say my name. You will all be compelled to say my name at the end of the poem because of the magic of the yarn ball. Listen, I'll tell you where you're going to say my name. It goes, rickety rackety rockety ree, will you say your name for me? And then I say my name first, Mr. Rao, and the yarn ball's going to make you all repeat it. Do you want to see it happen? Okay, and so then I do it, and I go, rickety rackety rockety ree, will you say your name for me? Mr. Rao. And I point my hand out at all the kids, and they just automatically react and repeat my name back. Not because of the yarn ball, but because I did it and I was so focused on the yarn ball, and then I looked at all of them and I had prepped it. And so of course they repeat back my name. So the yarn ball doesn't really do anything, but the yarn ball, they think, oh my gosh, it's magical. And some kids are like, no, it's because you're pointing at us. But other kids are like, oh my gosh. So the fun thing is that then you do it a couple times and then you can pass it to the next kid. And whoever holds the yarn ball gets to say their name at the end, and then everyone will repeat their name. So rickety rackety rockety ree, will you say your name for me? Kelly, Kelly, and everyone repeats it. And so it's just a fun way to learn kids' names. The yarn ball is fun in that like it gives kids a little bit more courage because they're the one holding the magic yarn ball. And so they have a little bit more encouragement to say their name. It also helps everyone know who's up because the kid holding the yarn ball is the one who gets to say their name. So the thing I tell kids is, you got to hold it with your bear claw, because if you don't do a bear claw hand, if you hold it by just one string, like if I hold it by just this one string, oh no, the string comes out, and then that string loses its magic and has to be thrown away. So I always tell kids, grab with your bear claw hand so that you don't accidentally take one little piece of the yarn out. But that's how I started initially. The kids are like, oh my gosh, it's magic. And then I have about 3 or 4 in my room, different colors, slightly different sizes. And so I use them for different things, and kids, are like continually amazed. I think because I have different colors, they're like, oh, this is something a little bit different, but they still are drawn to the yarn ball. And the cool thing is it's squishy, it's fun, you can use it for a lot of stuff. So a couple quick things. We actually made yarn balls at my district professional development this last week, and my teacher leaders asked, would you be willing to share a couple ideas? So here are the ideas that I shared about my yarn ball. So you can use it for any sort of passing game, any passing chant that you want to do. Pass the pumpkin around the circle, pass the ball. Ickle, ockle, blue bockle, I think some people use. So if you, like any poem you want, if it's a passing thing where they're keeping the steady beat, this is a really great thing to pass because it's so soft. The kids like it because of the feeling of it. It's squishy. And so they like passing it. They like having the chance to hold it. And so it's a really easy to sub in. The nice thing about it is, if it gets tossed or passed too hard, it hits somebody in the face, they think that's great. Like they're all about it because it's soft and it's fun and they like using it. And it's safe too because if it does get tossed or passed, no problem. So passing games, I use it for incentives. One of the things that I do is, if you do a really great job, oh my gosh, you gave such a good answer, here, hold the yarn ball, until someone else gives an amazing answer just like that. So, I give it as an incentive, or sometimes if a kid is crying or sad, they get to go sit and calm down in my comfy green chair, and they can hold the yarn ball if they don't want to hold the teddy bear that's on the chair. They can, it can be something sort of calming. It really is sort of fun and sensory. They can squish it and squeeze it, and that's fun for kids. Let's see. You can sort of use it like the talking stick, or like, Lord of the Flies, like, I got the conch. Like, whoever holds the yarn ball gets to answer the question. So you could say, raise your hand if you can tell me the answer to blah, blah, blah. And then whoever has the yarn ball gets to give the answer. And then that, again, it denotes who gets to speak and who does not. And it's fun, and it gives them a reason to want to answer. So some of those kids who don't want to answer, you'll get to hold the yarn ball if you give an answer. And so some kids really like to do that. So one thing that I'm using it for recently is vocal exploration. So in my classes, we do a lot of like, woo, just, painting through the air with our finger, or painting with, sometimes we'll use straws, sometimes we'll use rhythm sticks, whatever, to help us sort of visualize the going up is voice up, going down is voice down. So what I did with this week is I brought out the yarn ball and I said, use your voice to match the yarn ball. And I did a little demo. I went, woo, 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 woo. And they sort of started to match me. And then I would go, woo, woo, a little higher. And their voice would go a little higher. And then the yarn ball would go even higher. Woo, woo. And then I would do patterns. I'd do woo, 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 woo. And they'd have to match. In time. They didn't echo, they matched as the yarn ball would move. So then I do a couple other silly things, like I'd go really high, or I'd go high and then I'd let it fall to the ground, which was always hilarious to watch because it would go woo! And they would watch it go all the way down, and of course kids would like scramble to get it, but then I would say, oh no, like I'll get it. You did great. Just let's watch it fall though. Let's see where it falls. And so we would go up and over, and then we'd let it fall. So I would demo 3 or 4 ideas, and then I would say, I've been watching. There's one kid who's doing such a good job. I gotta let this kid hold the yarn ball and decide where the ball goes. And so I would toss it over to one student who's, paying attention or whatever, and then they would stand up and would get to move it around, and whatever they do, we have to match them. And kids loved that. Like, that was a super winner. And I ended up doing it this week with 4 different kids in each class. So one kid would do it, they'd pass it back to me. Another kid would do it for about 20 or 30 seconds, they'd pass it back to me. And I go through about 4 different kids. I try and get kids, you know, all around the circle, different groups of kids who'd maybe be quiet normally, kids who would give answers all the time normally, just to get a little bit of variety. And so the yarn ball worked really well, and it was super fun for vocal exploration, and the kids loved it. And because I have different color yarn balls, the next time I bring it out, I could use a different color, and they'll be just as jazzed about it. Sometimes all it takes is just changing the color, switching from one mallet to another, switching a little thing about your activity to get kids to stay engaged through a longer activity. So for me, changing the color for them might be that thing to keep them hooked. So a couple things about yarn ball. That the type of yarn you use, if you're going to make it, it doesn't matter. You can use the expensive stuff, you can use the thicker stuff, you can use the smaller stuff. It really doesn't matter. I've paid once to get the more expensive, fancy soft yarn. I got even one with silver wrapped around each thread of yarn. That was super cool, but I only made that once. You can use the really cheapy stuff. This stuff, you can't see it on this strand. This stuff is actually the sort of yarn that changes color every few inches. It goes from pink to red to dark red to whatever. So you can get those fun yarns, and they make a really colorful yarn ball. But the yarn really doesn't matter. You can use scraps, whatever you want. I did a whole blog post about how to make them, and that's linked on the links page in case you want to go make your own. One cool thing, my friend Rita, who's a colleague in my district, she teaches at one of the other elementary schools. She was reading through my blog post, and she saw that I used cardboard circles to wrap the yarn around, and she was at Michael's and found cake bases, for cake decorating. They make little circles that are cardboard. They're pretty strong, and they were just the perfect size. So she bought a bunch of those for our district PD day and brought them in, and we all made yarn balls. Mine's actually halfway there, and so I'm in the middle of making this yarn ball, and it's going to be green and white. It takes 2 full skeins of yarn, and this is the cake stand with the middle cut out and a little passageway cut out here. And so I'm mid-process. It takes a while to wrap, so usually I sit down and watch a movie or something and just wrap, and I don't have to think about what I'm doing, and it's pretty fun to do. But then you end up with a really cool looking yarn ball. So the cake stands are a brilliant idea. Great job, Rita. Good job finding those. They're super, super great. And if you want a tutorial on how to make your own, you can find that, like I said, on the links page. The last time I mentioned it, a bunch of people went out and made some and sent pictures, and they look really cool. If you use the really thick yarn, you're not going to need quite as much because of the volume. So I honestly use the really cheapy stuff, and for what we use it for, if I went out and bought really expensive yarn and then a kid sneezed on the yarn ball, I'd feel oh no. But if a kid ruins this or rips it apart or whatever, I'm not going to be heartbroken because it didn't cost me that much. I could just remake it. So use your scraps, use the cheaper stuff. Don't stress out. The yarn ball is one of my favorite tools to use, and I first learned about it from my friend Jennifer Donovan, who taught at my Orff levels, and she's brilliant. And they're all over. You can use them for all sorts of things. Okay, so I talked a little bit in the last video about square dancing, and I'd never taught square dances before, and I was using the song Solomon Levi. And Solomon Levi, it's a really fun song. The cool thing about that song is that, the caller, the person who's singing the verse, really calls out what the actions are. So, honor to your partner, bow to your corners all join hands and circle after you circle around the hall. So the person who's singing sort of tells kids what they're doing. It's a great review song. But my kids were not so good at the squares. I struggled for a couple days on how to teach them how to get into the square, how to do it. And so here are a couple tricks that I learned along the way. So the first thing I did was, instead of just starting in a square, I said, find a duet, make a duet. We talked about what that is. That's 2 kids. And so they made their duet. And my quick way for making a duet is stand up with your hand up. Once you have a duet, you take their hand and sit down. And so then kids have to commit to taking someone's hand, and then they have to sit down when they're when they found a partner. So the cool thing about that is when they find a partner, they sit down. So then the room sort of clears out until you're down to the people who don't have a partner. If you just say, like, find a partner and stand with your partner, well, then those kids who don't have partners can wander around for, the rest of the hour, and they're like, I can't find anyone. So when you sit down once you have a partner, then it quickly shows who still needs a partner. You can pair off a little bit faster. So we stand up, we find our duet, we make a partner, and then I jump into practicing things just right away with the partner. So I say, oh my gosh, you remember we did in the song Old Brass Wagon, we did this thing called Swing Your Partner, where you link arms and you sort of link up like a pretzel and you swirl around it in a circle. And so they do that. They swing their partner, they swing with both arms, they switch directions. I say, great, you know what? Also in Old Brass Wagon, we learned about that thing called do-si-do. Can we try a do-si-do? And so we go through, we practice the do-si-do. And I say, you know what? Also in Old Brass Wagon, it was a really fun song. Also in Old Brass Wagon, we learned this thing called promenade. Sometimes I say promenade. Sometimes I say promenade. Sometimes promenade. But it's the same word. And when you promenade, so we do a promenade, and then we promenade around the room, and we practice all three. Just a quick recap, we do it before we even get to the square. So they're like set with their partner, they're good. And so then I say, I pull 4 groups of four duets into a little clump. And then I go to another and I pull 4 more into a clump, and then I say pull 4 more into a clump, and then I say, okay, now you and your partner and the other duets, you need to make a square shape. You need to take your bodies and make a square shape. And sometimes that works. Other times it doesn't. And so sometimes, the first day I did this, I was like walking around trying to move kids around. They just didn't get it. So then I realized I had, like my first real apartment, I was like, I'm going to be organized. And I bought like cork boards and all sorts of stuff. They are no longer in my house. But at school, I have this cork board and it's a square. And on the back, I have magnets so that I can stick it to my whiteboard. Well, I've been using it to talk about whole note, half note, and how if you just flip it around, it looks like the other one. It's a whole note or half note. And I've been using it for that, and I would just, swirl it around on the board. Well, then I took Post-it notes, which are really just very, very simple, and I said, the 2 yellows are you and your partner. The 2 blue Post-its on this other side are another duet. The 2 pink on the other side are another duet. The 2 orange down here are another duet. See if you can make yourselves into this shape. And once I had that visual, kids sort of snapped into it. It made a little bit more sense to some of them. Because, all kids are different. Some kids need a verbal example. Some kids need a visual example. Some kids need to feel it and do it. And so for those kids who needed a visual, this was really helpful. For other kids, I was still walking around and sort of moving them around into their space. But this was a really helpful visual for a lot of kids. The other cool thing about this is then when I said, okay, so these 2 pinks, this is you and your partner. So here's you and here's your partner. Now, if you look at the square shape, in between you and this orange partner over here is a corner. It's the corner of the square. So that's why the person on your partner is your partner. The person on your other side, you have to cross the corner to get to them. So we call them your corner. And so that's how we did partners and corners. The other fun thing is, when we did circle left, I could say, oh, you're all going to take and move, and I would take the square and I would turn it, and the kids could sort of see they're moving around in a circular shape. They could see that the square sort of wheel was turning, and then I could say, oh, now circle right. And I could do the same thing and turn it, and the kids sort of got that visual, and it helped them make those transitions that they weren't just getting when I used just my words. And so using the visual has really, really helped my students to sort of figure out how the song goes together. And then the great thing about Solomon Levi is you can take the words and change the action. So my kids, we did honor to your partner, honor to your corner. We did circle left, circle right. We did swing your partner, and then we did promenade. Well, we had a little bit more time at the end of class. They needed a little bit more review. So then the second time, I switched it to honor to your corner, honor to your partner. So I just flipped those. And then I did right hand in for right hand star. I did left hand star. And then I said do-si-do your partner before you promenade. And so it gave me a chance to sort of review some of that. If you look at the lesson outline in the New England Dancing Masters book, there's a sort of a more complex figure that you could throw in there. But I decided instead to just take our basic thing that we were already doing and review some of the dance moves that we already knew. And that was very, very helpful for my students. But I would encourage you, I was even like, how am I going to do this? I thought about like making a big square to put on the floor for kids to stand at different spots. But before I did that, I just happened to see this square cork board. I pulled it out and used it as a visual, and that really helped a lot of kids. And I didn't have to like go in and make a big square for the floor. So this visual just really helped a lot of kids. You could make a square for the floor, but this is my first foray into square dancing and trying to explain square dancing and trying to get kids into the square. So if you have any other brilliant ideas about square dancing, please leave a comment, send me a message, send me an idea, because I need all the help I can get. And this has been working so far, but I'd love to make my practice even better. So if you have more ideas, please share those. Yeah, cool. So the yarn ball, square dance visual, both have been pretty helpful, so I wanted to share those. Okay, let's get into my 5th grade lesson. 5th grade, I'm just going to take you through the whole lesson and give you a little bit, and the Orff instrument stuff's going to come at the end. It's sort of, well, I'll just tell you, my 5th grade classes have been having a real struggle. In all our specials classes, they've been struggling. They're at the end of the day, and then because of logistics and some other stuff, they got moved to the very, very end of the day. So like they bring their backpacks to my room, and they like release from my room to the buses. So part of it is that they have behavior problems as it is. Part of it is that they're having behavior problems because they are checking out, like physically and sometimes, I mean like mentally and sometimes physically checking out. Some of your kids are like leaving my room in the middle of the lesson. So we've just been really struggling. My whole specials team has talked about it. I've been trying these lessons with a little bit more exploration, a little bit more freedom, a little bit more improvisation, and the kids were doing okay. But it was like I was using all my Jedi skills to keep them under control and to keep them focused, and that is exhausting. And so what I decided to do in this lesson is go back to the Orff instruments, because that's a huge draw for kids, but like break it down and get them to do some very basic things to sort of get them into the process of doing it and then ease them into playing and exploring. But the incentive is they're going to be at the instruments if they can behave, if they can handle it. That's sort of where we're going, and that's the impetus sort of behind what I'm going to share a little bit tonight in this lesson. But when kids come in, they come in, they sit down, and then over the past few weeks we've been talking about dynamics, and we've been talking about, we've looked at them on the word wall, we found them on the word wall. We started with just forte and piano. We did a little activity with that. I shared about that several weeks ago. The next week we talked about fortissimo and pianissimo and how that's different from forte and piano. We talked about you add issimo onto the end of forte. It's sort of like a suffix, connecting it with English language arts, and then did a whole sort of lesson on that. In the following week, we added in mezzo piano, mezzo forte, and we talked about how that changes the word, and it's sort of like a prefix, sort of not. After I shared about that, someone wrote in to say that mezzo translates to half, so it's like half loud, half quiet. But half loud, I think my kids can understand. Half quiet, I don't think that for them, and for me, logically, I'm like, half quiet's like quieter. And so what I say to kids, I say like medium quiet, or like a little bit quiet. And so then we talk a little bit later about half, sort of. But the mezzo, I did a whole lesson on that, talking about mezzo piano, mezzo forte. So when kids come in, I say, raise your hand if you can tell me one of the dynamic levels that you know. And I'm sorry, this is going to be a little bit backwards because of my FaceTime cameras. But they come in and, someone will say forte. Okay, great. I'm going to put forte right here. Okay, what else do you know? Okay, piano. Okay, great. And then someone will say pianissimo, and I just take hands. What do you remember? Okay, and we go all the way. We do mezzo piano, mezzo forte, and then we do fortissimo. Okay, great. And so then I go over to the word wall, and I'm pointing at the word wall, and I say, on the word wall, it's easy to find these because they're all stacked together. Fortissimo, forte, mezzo piano, piano, pianissimo. They're all right there, and you can tell that they go together because on the edge of each card is its little symbol, the one with just the letter, sort of the initial. Okay, and that's easy to spot, right? Yeah, and all of these cards are pink. The cards next to them are blue, the cards on the other side are green, but all the dynamics cards are pink, so that's easy to see them, right? Yeah, it's easy to see. Oh, and they're under the header. That header that says dynamics. And I know that they've talked about like organization of words and documents in their classes. And so we talk about a header as sort of, it's an overarching idea. So the header is right there, and the header says dynamics, and it's above the pink cards, and all the pink cards are grouped together. They're physically near one another. So that's an easy way to know dynamics. All these go together. Right. Oh, but you know what? There are 2 cards right next to them, and they're on pink cards, and they're under the header dynamics, but we haven't talked about them yet. But they must be dynamics, right? They must be related to the dynamics, right? Because they're under the header, they're the same color. And I'm sort of setting this up because we're going to talk later about what's similar and what's different and labeling and all sorts of things. So I'm trying to get them in the mindset of like, think about groupings, think about what's similar, think about what's not. And so they're like, yeah, okay. And I said, we're going to talk about this one today. It's called crescendo. And I say, oh, crescendo, yeah, an Italian word, blah, blah, blah. And then I go up to the board, and it's going to look like a decrescendo to anyone looking at the FaceTime camera. I'm so sorry. But I draw in a crescendo, and I draw that and I show them, and I say, crescendo, the symbol is very small and then opens up, and gets bigger and bigger. And that's because a crescendo is, you're at a very quiet volume, and then you get a little bit louder. You're getting louder and louder and louder until you're loud. That's a crescendo. And a crescendo, you might start at pianissimo and go to piano, and then mezzo piano and mezzo forte and fortissimo. You might. Or you might start at pianissimo and go to piano and stop at mezzo piano. That's a crescendo. It means getting louder. Or you might start at mezzo piano and go to mezzo forte and then go to forte. That's a crescendo. Or you might start at piano and go to mezzo piano and mezzo forte and then go to fortissimo, because that's a crescendo too. Crescendo is just getting louder. And so they think that's hilarious. And so then I say, it's like when you look at the picture, it's like small, getting bigger, getting bigger, getting bigger, getting bigger. It's like the sound that we make is small at first. It gets bigger, it gets bigger, it gets bigger. That's why the crescendo has that symbol. Oh, okay. And then I pull out my baton, and I say, this is a baton. It's not a wand. It looks like a wand from Harry Potter, but it's not. It's a baton. And the easy way to tell a difference between a wand and a baton is that, well, they both have like a handle, and that's where you hold on. And they both have this long sort of stick shape. That's true. Both a wand and a baton do that. But a baton is almost always white. And that's because the conductor wants you to see it very easily, even in dark rooms, and white shows up really easily. And so that's why it's almost always white, but not always, but almost. And it's a little bit thinner than a wand, and it doesn't spark. So anyway, so kids are like, oh, okay. So anyway, so then I say, and a conductor, one of the great things that a conductor does, a conductor can show you how fast or how slow they want you to go just by waving the baton. Here, watch. And I say, you're just going to keep a steady beat just with tas. Ta, 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 ta. And I just do an example, really simple. And they follow along, and they cut off when I cut off. And I say, what was this? I do the cut off again. And they go, it means you need to stop. I was like, right. And my hand stopped moving, right? Yeah, okay, great. Now, if I wanted to go to faster, I might do this. Ta, 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 ta. Or if I wanted to go faster, I could do this. Ta, 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 ta. Or I could do this. Ta, 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 ta. And I do a couple different tempos just to get them the idea of like a baton is to keep tempo, right? And I do hold them to it. And if they're starting to go faster than I'm going, I'll jump in. Ta. If they're going ta 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 ta, and I'll go ta 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 ta, and I'll just say it with my beat because I know how fast I'm going, and it recenters them. Okay, so I do a couple examples like that, and then I say, you know what? A conductor can show a crescendo with their baton. Watch. Just watch and listen. And I always remind them, just watch, just listen. Ta, 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 ta. And they say, what did you notice that the conductor did? What did you notice that I did with my baton? And they go, oh, you got bigger. Your arm, your movement was bigger. And I go, yes, my gesture was bigger. My movement was bigger. Just like our symbol. Remember? Because it starts small and gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And the conductor does the same thing. The conductor starts with a small gesture and gets bigger and bigger. When they want you to be louder, they get bigger and bigger and bigger. They'll stay at the same tempo, but their conductor's actions, their gesture gets bigger, just like the symbol. Okay, your turn, and the kids get to try it. And they think it's hilarious because they follow along really well, but then they get to be loud. So they love that. There's always that like one kid in the class who, when they get to fortissimo, is like, ta! And I'm like, wow, that was loud, good job, but you actually didn't stay with the beat. So if you're gonna be that loud, you gotta go ta, ta, ta. You can't just go ta, because I didn't have a fermata. If I did, I would have held it, but I didn't do that. So make sure you're watch it. And then the kids are like, oh, haha, okay, and then we do it again. But the kids like that. And the cool thing is that then you're making a connection between the physical movement in the space and the conductor and the symbol that they see on the page. And that is vital because that's legitimately why the symbol's there, to represent something else. So you're making connection between the vocabulary, between gesture and sound. You're making connection between the widening on the page of the crescendo mark and also with their sound. And you're helping them sort of put words to that and get an explanation for that. And that is so valuable. And so next week, we're going to talk about decrescendo, and we're going to see if they can understand how that functions is a little bit different with the crescendo. So you might have noticed every week I do just an incremental thing. The first week we take 5 minutes, we do forte piano. The next week we add forte piano, fortissimo, pianissimo. The next week, we add to that set of 4, mezzo forte, mezzo piano. This week, we added crescendo. Next week, we're going to add decrescendo. Then we're going to move on to something else. But it means that every week they get a little bit of practice. We get to keep going back. We get to keep hearkening back to the things we've already learned, and we get to apply more. And that's sort of how I do dynamics. I've been doing this with 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade because I've realized that they don't all have that knowledge the way that I want them to. So for 5th graders, really honestly, this is a review, but it doesn't feel like a review for them because we're sort of learning it in a different way. And I guarantee they're going to remember this better. And it started with, who remembers one of the dynamics? And then we looked at the wall. We compared with the wall. We looked at the groupings. We compared all of that. And then we saw how that goes together. So there's a lot of compare contrast. There's a lot of critical thinking in what happens. But really the idea is I want them to get that idea, the crescendo, and I want them to see how what's on the page matches what they need to do. Okay, cool. Let me just make sure I don't have any questions. Cool. So, yeah, I'm glad I'm not the only one who's having 5th grade problems. Okay, cool. Well, then if you have more questions about this dynamic lesson or how exactly I did it, I'm hoping to do a video just about all the little mini vignettes about dynamics so that they're all in one place. So that's in my plan to do. So if you're like, I'd love to see all of these in a row, I'll try and get to that. But it's not going to happen tonight. Okay, so that's dynamics with 5th grade. That's where we start. And then we spread out to a good personal space. And we go to the note neighborhood. And I talked about this last week that we've been learning 8th note and 16th note groupings. So 1/18 and 2/16, 2/16 and 1/8. Oh, I've got this whiteboard here. Why don't I just use it as a better example? So in the last lesson in the last couple lessons we learned about these 2 different groupings, and we sort of had to talk about how they're different, how they're the same. And at the note neighborhood, it was just sort of a silly story about how they came to be and what they're doing. So one of the things that I'm so glad I put in the time doing when I made the note neighborhood was there's an introduction PowerPoint and then there's a practice PowerPoint. So there's a whole introduction with a whole story about, oh, we're going to go jump roping, blah, 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 and they end up in these different groupings. And I use Taadimi and Takadi because I use the Takadimi system, but you could use T-Tika or Tika-T or whatever it is. whatever syllable system you use. But in the PowerPoint, they go jump roping, and they learn this. And then in the practice PowerPoint, they go to the farm, and they go out into the cornfield, and they, which is perfect for this time of year, for fall and whatever. But they go into the cornfield, and they do more practice. And so kids along the way, I'll stop in the PowerPoint, and I'll say, great, there are a lot of notes up on the screen. And I'll say, go up if raise your hand if you'd like to go up and point to a tadimi. Go ahead, go point to a tadimi. And they'll go up and they'll point, and we'll demonstrate. Great, and the next slide, go point if you want to point to a takadi. And they'll go up and they'll point. And really, all of this, everything that we're doing is, this is tricky for kids at first. And so it's getting them to find the differences between the two, being able to read them on command, but also finding similarities with other things. With this, I tell kids, this to me just looks like ta-di. Or sorry, for you it's probably backwards. This just like ta-di. But it's ta-dini. It's like you add something on the end. Ta-dini. So that's easy for me to see, because for me it looks like ta-di, but ta-dini. And this one looks like takadimi, but it looks like somebody cut it short. So not takadimi, just takadi. And that's easy for me to remember too. And so this syllable system, takadimi, is a little tricky when it gets to this pairing. I think it's easier maybe for other people going ti tika, or tika-ti, 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 ti tika-ti, tika. But I still think takadimi is valuable, so I'm going to stay with it. But in this part of the lesson, it's going through the PowerPoint, it's getting chances to try it, to fail. I always love to say, if we're going along and you get to one of these and you can't remember what to say, do your best. And then when you get to the next one, which might just be 8th notes, or might just be 16th notes, or might be a rest, well, then do that one perfect, because we've done that one for years. But if we get to the brand new one and you can't remember right away and you're having a hard time, that's okay. It's really new to us. But just do your very best. Just don't go, I gotta stop, can't do any more when you get to this one. Do this one your very best, and then make sure that when you get to the ones that you know, do those for sure. Do those the best you can. So like if we go from, takadi to tadi, well then make sure you do this one really well. And so it's like getting kids to build up endurance. It's getting them to differentiate between different notes. It's getting them to look for commonalities. And that is really taxing on their brain. And so I only do about 5 or 6 minutes of that. We do it, we hit it, we go for it. And then even with the Note Neighborhood stories, it still is like a little bit of a struggle. Like they like it for the story, but they're like a little bit of struggle. So I don't spend too much time on that, and then we go to the next thing. Because I know that they just don't have the endurance. It's the end of the day, it's new, it's hard. And so we just do as much as we can. So then we move on to the instrument part of the lesson. Say, oh, you did such a great job. I'm so glad you're all spread out. What I actually need you to do, I need you to sit in duets. And so find a partner and sit with your partner. So we get into our groupings, and I say, great, I'm watching for kids who are doing a really super duper amazing job paying attention and watching and listening. I let you make a choice about who you sit with. I hope that you made a really wonderful choice sitting with someone who you can work with, because this next part is going to be so much fun, but it's going to be a little bit tricky. So I really hope you can do a super great job. And so they're sitting in their duets, and I go over and I stand by my wall of instruments. And I have 3 or 4 different shelves with barred percussion instruments, the Orff instruments, on there. And I say, I want you to look over at these instruments and see if you notice anything. Like maybe look at the instrument, look at the bars, look at the labels, look at the cabinet, look at the mouths, look at anything you can, and see if you can find something that's similar or something that's different. So see if you can find something like that, and then raise your hand when you have an answer. And they come up with all sorts of answers. They might say, I see all the wood bars have yellow labels. Great. And there are 2 different kinds of labels on the metal bars. Great, I'm glad you noticed that. Or they might just say, all of the instruments have bars on them and mallets to play. Great, you're absolutely right. That's a great observation. What else do we see? And we go through, they're different sizes. They have different words. There's some that say alto and some that say bass. They always say bass. There's some that say bass, and there's some that say soprano. There's even one that says SOP, SOP. What is that? I don't know. We'll get to that. And so, you know, we look for commonalities, we look for things. And then I say like, oh, you know, after several kid answers, I say, wow, those are so many great things that you saw. You know, I heard some people say there are a lot of instruments with wooden bars. You're right. You know what? Even some of those bars, if you look really closely, you can't really tell because you're far away, but if you look really closely, they're not actually wood. Some are actually made out of something else called fiberglass, but they're made to look like and sound like wood. So we still count them in with the woods. But these wooden bars, instruments, they all go together and we call them xylophones. And then there are instruments with metal bars, and those we call metallophones. And glockenspiels are actually just little metallophones. They're a special kind of metallophone. And then they are, oh, glockenspiel is so funny. Right, it is funny. Say glockenspiel, glockenspiel. Okay, great. Say glockenspiel, glockenspiel. Okay, cool. So we go through, we find the commonalities, we find differences, and I say, now, when you take the instrument off the shelf, because in a minute, some of you might be doing that. If you're really paying attention, some of you might get to bring one of the instruments back to your spot. But when you bring it back, if you get to bring it back, one of the things that you're going to do, and I make a big deal about this, is I'm going to move things around a little bit so you can see this. But I say one of the things you need to do is you are going to find an instrument, and probably with that instrument there's going to be an instrument and there are going to be mallets. So one person in the duet, one partner will take the mallets, and the other partner will take the instrument. Now, even if you have a little instrument that you think is so easy to carry and is so light, you're still going to put one hand on each side and hold it very carefully and carry it back to your spot and set it down on the ground in front of you. But you've got to be careful because some of these instruments, they look like they're light and then they're actually not because they're very heavy, especially the instruments with the metal bars. Oh, you've got to be careful with those because they are very heavy. So you've got to be strong. I know there's some very strong people in this room, so you're going to do amazing at that. But remember, you always have one hand on each side of the instrument when you lift up. Don't try and carry the mallets and the instrument. Just one kid carries the mallet and the other kid carries the instrument. So I'll show you. And I take an instrument off the shelf. I carry it back. I choose a kid to carry the mallets for me and I set it down very carefully. Oh, wow. You know what? I see a duet right here that's doing a super amazing job. Would you go and choose an instrument from the shelf? You get to choose whatever you want because you're doing so good. I'll let you choose whatever you'd like. Go choose an instrument and take it back to your spot. Great, I see another duet back there that's watching so carefully. They've been doing such an amazing job. Go choose an instrument that you'd like. And I do that with about 3 or maybe 4 duets. And so those instruments come off the shelf and they are like it's the kids who I know are the super high flyers. They are very super careful to take the instruments back to their spot. They're like, you know, the kids with the mallets are even like, I'm going to be very careful with these mallets. And they take them back to their spot. They do a great job. So when you get to your spot, then I'll say, oh, wow, I'm so impressed. Now, what you're going to both sit at the instrument. Great, good job. Okay, so then we sort of get more kids out. I'm really cognizant about traffic, and one of the things I say to kids is, if you're both going for xylophones, and there's a xylophone on this shelf and a xylophone on this shelf, one duet goes first, and then the next duet goes in. Otherwise, you're going to have a car crash when you're both trying to go for the same instrument, one high and one low. You're going to crash. The bars are going to fall off. So if one person's there, wait until they take their instrument and leave to go in and get the next one. You've got to wait. And so we talk about that. We make a big deal about that. We talk about that traffic, and then we carry it back to our spot. And then I say, make sure that your big bars are on the left and your little bars are on the right. And then I actually flip mine around. And I'm just going to turn mine around so that mine matches yours. But you want your big bars on your left and your little bars on the right. Great. Okay, so then I mirror them. And then I say, if you're doing it right, if you look on the bars, because there should be letters on the bars, if you look on the bars, they're going to be the right side up. If your letters are upside down, you got to turn the instrument around. It's the wrong way. And so we sort of walk through some of that. The big bars are on your left, the other bars are on your right. Oh gosh, and now because I have my FaceTime camera, it's actually a backwards view, so I'm just going to turn it around. And it looks perfect. Okay, so your big bars are on the left, your little bars are on the right. Great. Okay, so now let's see. Well, there are lots of bars in front of you. Wonderful. We carried it. Great. We brought them back. Selected groups do it. We talk about traffic, all that. Then we talk about mallets. And I say, each kid, hold a mallet. Great. So each kid gets one mallet. Good job. Okay, now, you all are so super familiar with turtles. You're very good with turtles, right? And I pull out my little turtle puppet. And I say, you're very smart about turtles, and you can probably always spot a turtle even from far away, because a turtle has a neck with a head, right? And he has a little tiny tail, not a huge one, just a little one, and legs that can move around. And then the easiest thing to spot about a turtle is its shell, right? Because if a turtle didn't have a shell, it just looks sort of like a lizard, I guess. But a shell, it's really easy to see, right? And everyone knows turtles love to lay on their back. They love to sunbathe, they sleep on their back, and the kids give me like these weird looks at this point. And some kids are like, have you ever been to the science lab? We have a turtle, it's never on its back. And I was like, oh, right. They don't like to be on their back. They love to balance on the side of their shell. They love that. And they go, no. Oh, sorry, so shell's on top. They're like, yeah, shell's on top. And the turtle's like, shell's on top. And I say, so great, well, what you're going to do is you're going to make a turtle with your mallet. And so you're going to have a neck with a head on one end. You're going to have a little tiny tail. If his tail is super long, that's a little embarrassing. And if there's no tail, that's embarrassing too. So, but try it with no tail, and then try it with a long tail. And so that's getting kids to move the mallet around in their hand, right? And so then, and remember, his legs can move if they want to. Good. Okay. And then the most important thing is the shell. And what did we say? Well, they like to lay on the back, on their back, right? And the kids are like, no. Oh, sorry. They like to be on their side, just like this. Your hand like this. No. And I go, oh, sorry, shell up. Yeah, so the shell's on top. And this has been the most effective visual I've had with kids to get them to have hands on top like this. I've seen people say, like, I've even tried, hold it like you are riding a bicycle or a motorcycle, but the kids don't ride either of those. And they're not very good. That visual, just for me, it doesn't always work. Or they'll try and do this, they'll try and do a straight line. And so I just have them do turtles, and for some reason that visual absolutely resonates with them. And you can always say, how's your shell? Is your turtle upside down? And they'll go from this to this. You just, say turtle, and they'll go whoop, and they'll fix it. And one of the things that then I show is I say, I told that to the third graders about the turtle, and there was one little girl, and she came and she had my little baby turtle. She went, hello, little turtle, how are you today? And she shoved his little head down into the sand. And the kids are like, I'm like, I know, isn't that crazy? It's not very nice. And so then, but that's what she did. She pressed down on its head, and I said, don't do that. Be nice to the turtle. She said, oh, I'm so sorry. I wanted to rub him on the head, but I guess I was doing it too hard. And I said, yeah, it's too hard. And then she took her mallet, and she made her mallet turtle, and she had a long neck with a head on the end and a little tiny tail. Her feet moved, and her shell was on top, but then she went, hello, little turtle. And she pushed his head down into the sand. And when you put your finger on top like this, it pushes the head down, and it's not good for the turtle. Pedagogically, it's getting kids to not press down because that'll dampen the sound, and it's just sort of bad instrument technique. So I always say, wrap your finger around like you're giving the turtle a hug or on his neck, and then that's so much better. And so for 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade, 1st grade, whoever, that is a visual that for my kids, it works with them, and they are like then mallet pros. Okay, so they hold the mallet, they do that. Great, oh my gosh, you're so good with the mallet. Okay, now, if you're looking at your instrument, and I turn on its side, sorry, extra bars inside. If you look at your instrument, you'll see these little black pieces right in here. Do you see those? I'm like, yeah, that's the fence post. And when you play, you can't play outside the fence post. You gotta play in between the fence posts. So take your mallet hand, and each kid has one turtle hand. Take your turtle, and you're gonna tap his head on any bar you want, I don't care, but it's gotta be in the middle, in between the 2 fence posts. Great, okay, awesome, amazing, kids are like doing that, whatever. Great, okay, now choose one and be my echo. Ta, ta, ta-dee, ta. Oh, good, ta-dee, 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 ta. Ta-dee, ta, ta-dee, ta. I don't really care at this point what they're choosing. I know it's all the bars are on. It sounds a little weird, but that's critical thinking. They're taking the words that I'm saying, they're transitioning that information, they're transferring the knowledge into how to play, and that's tricky for some kids. And so we're just getting them to do that. One, to remember where to play on the bar, to get comfortable with that, to get comfortable holding before we move on to the next thing. But also, it's a simple back and forth to give them a chance to practice. So then we put the mallets down on the ground, and I say, now we're going to talk about the bars. Sometimes we like to have all the bars on, sometimes we like to take them off. And all of our instruments, the bars can come off. Now watch this. Even with the smallest instrument, where did I put my glockenspiel? Even with the smallest instrument, where you might think, I can grab the whole thing and it'll be no problem. Even with that, if you're not careful and you just hold on one side and go like this, oh, Oh, I almost lost it off the side over here because it got stuck. It was stuck. If I'm not careful and I'm just going too fast, the whole thing might move because it might get stuck. So what you need to do is make sure it's on the ground, and then one hand on each side, and you're going to pull up. Don't pull too hard. If you need to wiggle around, you can, but just pull gently, and then you lift straight up off like that, sort of like an elevator or a helicopter. But you know those fence posts we talked about? If you turn it like if you turn it like that, that fence post might bend and break, and we don't want that. With 5th graders, you can talk about that consequence. With 1st or 2nd graders, I just use the visual of the helicopter or the elevator because they get the up and down. 5th graders, you can say why you shouldn't do it, and then they'll get that. But anything 3rd grade or younger, probably they're just like, oh, cool, we're taking bars off. So then what I say is choose any bar you want and take it off. Pull it straight up. Good job. Anyway, oh, perfect. Wonderful. Now hold it in your hand. Okay. Good. And you know what? If you wanted to rest it if you needed your hands to text or something, I don't know, to hold a mallet, you could put it inside the box like this. Now that's my personal preference. I'm okay with kids doing that. Some teachers don't like that. Some teachers want them to put it on the ground or put it in if you have a cart, put it in the cart underneath. I'm okay with the bars going in like this. That's my preference. But do whatever feels most comfortable to you. I know at the Orff Institute they were saying, turn the bar over and then put it back so that it stays on the instrument, but it doesn't look the same and it keeps the resonance of the instrument the same. But my kids struggle with that. So I let them tilt them in, and that's fine with me. And the reason I don't have them take them all the way off is because then it always seems to happen that they'll take them all the way off, and there's that one kid when it's time to put them back, puts F's in a spot that should be F's, but they put them back wrong. And so just to save myself time and stress, I just have them tilt the bars inside. But then, I said you can take any bar off that you want. Okay, then put that bar back. We're going to do special bars. And I have this visual I made several years ago. It's just really a silly, simple visual that I made with foam core. And there's a whole blog post on my blog about how to make this if you're interested yourself. But it's just a basic visual, and then these bars come off, and then I can put them away. But this is a nice, big, simple visual to use. You could use a digital one if you want, but I like the tactile element of doing that. If I were to remake this, and I probably will be remaking this in the next year or two, I would do it with felt. Or I'd do it with something that's not hard-edged or could crack or break, because these will eventually do that. I've been babying it along, and it's an okay shape, but it'd be nice to have felt so then I could, it could travel or whatever. But anyway, this visual is nice to have, and if you're interested in a visual like this, you can go on my blog. I put a link to that. But I say we're going to take off all the instruments, or all the bars that start with a B for burgers, or F for fries. You should have 1 burger and 2 fries per instrument. So make sure you take those off. Let's see if I can just leave that back there. And you're gonna take that off. Okay, so kids do that. They take off the B's and the F's. Great, okay. We go through. Again, this is because 5th grade has been so rough that we're just going real slow. We're just trying to ease them in and just use some procedure to get them to be successful. So then I say, one kid holds both mallets, and the other kid, I say, freeze before you play. Find your C, find your G. Good. And freeze before you play. Other student, partner, check. Make sure that their turtle has a tail. And the kids who are frozen are like, and I say, check to make sure it has a tail. Check to make sure that the shell's up. Check to make sure the head is right in the right spot. They're going to play in between the fence posts. Great. Okay, now a person who's playing, we're going to keep a steady beat. Here we go. Steady beat, steady beat. Actually, the first time I don't even say C and G. I just say steady beat anywhere. I honestly don't care, as long as they continue to play the same bars and they keep a steady beat. Eventually I move to C and G, because that's going to be the bordune that we're going to play. We just keep a steady beat the first time, we're super successful, and we stop. In the last lesson we did tidy-o, so maybe we go past 1 window, tidy-o, past 2 windows, tidy-o, past 3 windows, tidy-o, jingle at the window, tidy-o, jinglin', 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 Joe, jingle at the window, tidy-o. And then the kids would pass off the mallets, And I always say you have to play on the biggest bar, so if that kid has to move and you have to move in and take their spot, that's just fine. And so then that kid gets to do the same thing. Then the first kid goes, and the second kid gets all the same things. They have to freeze, they got to check, they got to play steady beat, all of that. Then we do, great, now, instead of just doing a steady beat, let's do a pattern. Let's do the one we already know. Let's do, will you be my friend? Will you be my friend? Now, we've done this before for other songs, for other things. Usually, before we even get to instruments, we'll just do it with body percussion. But my 5th graders have done this on multiple occasions with other songs, so I'm skipping the step of body percussion, even though I could add that in. Or if they're having trouble, I could have them put mallets down and go right back to body percussion. But we do the body percussion, and we sing the song. Pass one window, tidy-o. Pass 2 windows, tidy-o. Pass, and then we go through, we switch, the other kid checks, they do whatever. If you're not playing, you get to sing. So every kid is involved every time. And I have enough instruments that I can have 2 kids per instrument, and they can work together. I have enough for that. If you don't have enough for that, there are other ways to rotate. You can have kids rotate in. You can have other kids doing body percussion. You can have, actually, with an instrument like this, 2 kids playing every time, and you could have 2 kids sitting on the side if you have the full 2 octaves. Or even if you have not the full 2 octaves, if you have enough for the C and G and C and G. That's an option. Then, once we get ready, or once we've done that a couple times, then instead of doing the Bourdon pattern, that basic one, we could do broken, pass 1 window, tidy-o, pass 2 windows, tidy-o, pass 3 windows, tidy-o, and that's really just a steady beat. It could be pass 1 windows, tidy-o, pass 2 windows, tidy-o, pass 3 windows, tidy-o, jingle at the window, tidy-o. And you could have them do that. Eventually, I want kids to be able to do pass 1 window, tidy-o, pass 2 windows, tidy-o, pass 3 windows, tidy-o, jingle at the window, tidy-o, and do a crossover. Eventually, we'll get there. We're taking a long time because we're 5th graders and we're having troubles, but we're getting there. And going through slowly, having a partner check them, having them work with a partner, that's getting them there a lot faster, but we're going to eventually get there. So, one thing that we do then sometimes is I say, great, now, in your little group, I'm going to play a pattern and you get to play that same thing. So if I said ta, ta, ta-dee, ta, you could go ta. And I'll play another, and you could choose another bar. Ta-dee, ta, ta-dee, ta. And we do that 3 or 4 times. And then and we'll switch, then the next partner plays or whatever, then they get to do it. Or I might say, in your little group of 3 or 2, because your instrument should be set up so it's 3 and 2 and 3 and 2. In your little group, you can use the full cluster. You can use like this. You could go ta, ta, ta-dee, ta. Or you could go ta-dee, ta, ta-dee, ta. I don't care as long as you stay in the cluster. Now, sometimes I'll go like this. Ta-dee, ta, ta-dee, ta. I'll do it on the visual to really give them that view. But I let them do that too. One other thing that I do, and this is a little instrument that I just found at a state convention, and it's part of, if you ever do world music drumming, you might have one of these already. It's an instrument from Ghana called a Frichiwa. That's not how you would guess that it's spelled. It's spelled F-I-R-I-K-I-W-Y-A or something like that. Different companies spell them different ways, but it's basically just you can use it as a timekeeper, you can use it as a rhythmic instrument. I use it for my kids for a lot of different ways. Sometimes when we're keeping the steady beat, I'll just click it. And the nice thing is it's not abrasive or over-the-top crazy sound, but it lets kids hear and echo easily. It's sort of like a cowbell. But the nice thing is it's one-handed, so then I can, go over and help with my other hand or whatever while I'm still doing this. I could even use it for echoing back and forth. And so this is a really fun instrument to use and have if you're going to be doing something like this. And valuable to have. Not expensive. The one I linked from my Amazon page is $12. There are 16, I think, on West Music. So there are a lot of different options and things that you can get. But it's a really valuable instrument. Before we put away, we have to put the bars back on. So I review, when it goes back on. If it doesn't go all the way down, don't just push it down. You got to either tap it or wiggle it or give it just a little bit of pressure. And then I say whoever didn't carry it before carries it back. I want all the wood instruments to go first. Remember traffic. If there's somebody in the way, you can't push them out of the way. You got to wait. If you have a heavy instrument, you need to set it down while you're waiting. That's fine. And so we go over all of that. I make sure I leave enough time for them to do that. Otherwise, we're going to be stressing, and I'm going to be rushing. Or they're going to be rushing. I'm going to be stressed out. And I don't want the instruments to get broken. So I give them plenty of time to put away, plenty of time to get the instruments back where they need to and back on the shelf. Now the next time we do a lesson like this, they're going to be able to pull those instruments out much faster, make transitions much faster, do all those things and build upon what we've learned. But it's worth taking the time to do some of these procedure things so that they're prepped and ready to go and are successful in the next lesson. My 5th graders needed this breakdown. They needed the slowed down lesson. Maybe yours don't. Great. Then use this lesson or some of these techniques and ideas for other grades or other lessons as you see fit. But it is always okay to slow down, to go back and reteach those procedures. If you had questions along the way, I hope you'll leave questions here, or I hope you'll go join my Facebook group and leave those questions. I'm going to let Instagram go. Thanks so much for being with me tonight. And if you have questions, you can check my LinkedIn profile for all the links. And Facebook, thanks so much for coming along tonight and spending your night with me. Same with you. If you have questions, I'm going to go back into the feed now and try and answer any questions I missed when I was scooted back playing the xylophone. But if you have any other questions, feel free to reach out with a private message onto my Facebook page, or leave a question in the Facebook group, or send me an email, makemomentsmatter@gmail.com. But if you are interested in any of those links, they're on that links page, which is at the bottom of the caption for this video. All right, thanks for spending your night with me, and have a great week. Bye, everyone.